Welcome and thank you so much for joining us. I am John Kelly, accompanied by Darin Moon, and we're really glad to spend some time together. We would like to answer a couple of questions today in this live seminar. One is we'd like you to get better acquainted with Redox and who we are. And the second question we'd like to answer is what sets Redox apart? What makes us unique? In order to do that, I think it's appropriate to give just an overview of Redox. We're a bionutrient company. We focus on sustainable plant nutrition. This is our 26th year in business. And this photo here shows the three principles of Redox. We're currently in our headquarters in Idaho, and this photo is taken outside. The third person in the picture is Alejandro Rodriguez, and from one standpoint of Redox is the three of us all bring diverse backgrounds to the business, which is really great, and we've worked together for many years. Little background on Redox. This is our photo of our corporate headquarters located in Burley, Idaho, here in southern Idaho. At this facility, we also have a research farm, a research greenhouse, a large warehouse operation, manufacturing. And we have a fantastic team with Redox that our representatives are strategically located in key markets where we do business. And we manufacture as well in Monterrey, Mexico, a Cosmocell facility. We're in partnership with Cosmocell. And this facility is a very large facility, and all of our manufacturing, whether in Idaho, Monterey, or in this facility you're looking at in Waxahachie, Texas, all of our products are manufactured under what is referred to as ISO 9001 certification. That is a third-party quality assurance, as well as product utility assurance, making sure that our claims on our literature and labels are all met, which is very unusual to achieve that certification for a company in our category. So as Darin and I introduce ourselves, we felt compelled to kind of go back to the beginning. Darin and I actually shared some similarities in our career paths. I graduated from college a few years earlier than Darin, but I graduated from Brigham Young University. He graduated from Utah State University, so both in Utah. We both went as our first job out of college to very large agribusiness operations in California. Darin worked on a very large diversified farming operation with extensive marketing both in and out of the United States. And I worked on the production side as well for a very large agribusiness company. Great learning platform for both of us. We both were Idaho boys that were in and around farming and agriculture from the beginning. And our first jobs out of college added experience and diversity to our experience in the California agriculture. Darin, anything you'd like to add to kind of our background and where we started?
Not really, John. I would agree with what you just said. Both of our jobs right out of college exposed us to multiple cropping systems, multiple ways of growing crops, multiple and diverse environments. And I think it was a great foundation for us going forward as to how we looked at how plants grow and how soils act. So that was a great starting point for both of us.
Yeah. So I will mention, I lasted 20 years in California. Darin only lasted a few years, but our paths crossed. Um, and at one point, we had both left our corporate positions. We were both working for ourselves. And Darin had been working on some new novel technology. And we literally were talking, and he said, I think it's time to drop everything and commercialize this concept. And we did. We both got our affairs in order. And about 6 months later, started commercially selling our first product, which was OxyCom. The picture you're looking at here, Darin hasn't changed too much in the last few years, but has always been based on not finding a home for a product, but rather what is the symptom? What is the need? What are we trying to accomplish in the plant and the soil? And designing technology around that, as Darin mentioned.
Yeah, John, I really think that that's important for people to understand is we are not a company who has a chemistry that we try to sell into the marketplace. From day one, we sought uh, answers to symptoms of what's wrong with how plants grow, what environmental issues, etc. And then we went back to the drawing board and tried to create chemistry that answered those problems, which is a really unique and novel way of actually growing a fertilizer company, is creating products that solve problem, not just trying to sell or push product, but solve problems. That's been our DNA from day one.
Back in those days, Darin and I both shared similar experiences, many of you do, of production agriculture, where you're long days and you're gone a lot. So the early days of this business, it was second nature to us to commit all of our time, resources. And our first entry into the market was very simple. We found with various permanent crops as well as perennial crops, where roots weren't growing well, we would use this novel technology and we'd get positive plant responses. So we literally spent our first few years looking at roots, looking at plants, getting those responses. And it was largely based in California. And about 5 years into our business, we ventured into the Pacific Northwest as well. But right from the beginning, we spent our winters in Mexico. Now, why was that? Well, we were a young company that did not work off of venture capital, so we needed to sell product. And so for cash flow purposes, both of us are bilingual. We had connections in Latin America, and we would literally spend our winter times going back and forth. And that was how the business started, was literally looking at symptoms, providing solutions, working with growers and consultants. And that's how we spent our first few years of business. Well, research continued. And quite frankly, as we ventured out into different markets, honestly, our technology that we were very proud of wasn't as consistent as we had hoped. And it caused us to ask questions as to why, and look at nutritional requirements and soil chemistry and other factors. And those really drove our desire to be as consistent and provide benefits um, as consistently as possible.
John, it's part of our success is we were willing to look at our failures and not push through them, but actually come up with answers as to why, to our satisfaction, the products weren't meeting the level of expectation that you and I had for them. And the willingness to go back to the drawing board and look at the plant and look at what was going on in that plant, early on was another big factor in our success was the willingness to say, okay, what else does this plant need? What else is going on? And continue to add or continue to look at ways we could deal with the plant and its environment. That was a big part of our success.
Absolutely. We also weren't afraid to reach out for basic research. And we were very fortunate to work with some brilliant people. And early on, some of our technology, some of it patented, was actually recognized and published in research journals such as those we see on the screen right now: European Journal of Plant Pathology, Journal of Nematology. And in this process, we were really looking at novel mechanisms within the plant and novel pathways, understanding relationships. And it really was the basis for future technology development.
And I think I think something else I would point out is, though we were looking at it from a product basis, we had a couple of at this time, OxyCom was a main focus of ours. We also tried to understand complete plant growth. How did fertilizer affect things? How did soil chemistry? How did soil health? How did soil biology affect our view of the plant? And again, that holistic approach that we took early on helped us get to where we are today.
Absolutely. And the research continues. We have exciting ideas in the pipeline. As our businesses evolved, our portfolio of products and technology, we've landed on 4 key areas of focus. We call these redox solutions. As we look at symptoms that we can provide these benefits, these are areas of real strength for redox. And these are abiotic stress defense, root development, yield and quality, and soil health. I'd like to just give a very brief overview of redox and how we fit in with these solutions. First question you might ask is, well, how does your technology impact yield? Very briefly, we look at influencing 3 key areas. First, if you have a fruiting crop or a tuber crop, we can set more. We have technology that can promote reproductive growth in plants, and that can go straight to the bottom line. Second is nutritional balance, identifying opportunities to feed plants better, provide more balanced nutrition. Then last but not least, the fruit and the crop size. From a quality standpoint, we focus on nitrogen metabolism, which I'll talk about a little more here in a minute, fruit firmness, shelf life, basic quality, color, bricks, sugar content, and then nutritional balance. So let's dive into these very briefly. This graphic is actually very important. There is, in the current world situation, is what is referred to as the yield gap. Okay, it's a terminology I believe came out of UC Davis. It's referred to by some researchers there. What is the yield gap? Well, using our current technology, currently available conventional technology, we will not achieve food production requirements by 2050. We have to roughly double our food production. It is generally accepted that with current practices, our soil health is declining, yields are not improving, we have environmental issues that are byproduct of agriculture, and we simply can't just apply more fertilizer and get that response. So this is what we call the nitrogen metabolic cycle here.
I think, John, I'd just like to interject there. I think that's, for me personally, been a driving factor all along. Is years ago, we started a plateau in terms of what conventional fertilizer could do for yield and quality, okay? And yet we also know that plants can do more. So how Do we make that fertilizer A, more efficient, or B, what do we add that grows that plant better, gives more yield, gives more better quality? It's been a driving factor for me personally for years. Is let's not just put on more fertilizer. Let's grow a better plant. Let's grow a better plant.
So case in point, everyone recognizes applying more nitrogen has diminishing returns. You don't get more yield, you don't get more quality. Why is that? Well, essentially, the fundamental reason it's easy to get nitrogen in the plant, but it's difficult to get it in the form that is required to increase that yield and quality. Without trying to gloss over this too much, this requires understanding of key metabolic processes. And it so happens that Redox has some important tools that can facilitate this nitrogen metabolic process in plants.
And I think, John, it's really important to point out that that the efficiency of conventional fertilizers is terrible at best. Okay, we know phosphorus is less than 10%. Nitrogen efficiency is a third of the nitrogen applied as ever gets into the plant. On and on and on and on. Well, what if we could double that efficiency? What if we could find things to add to those fertilizers, or how things to add to the plant to make it assimilate that better or more efficiently? That has to be one of the driving factors of the future of agriculture, is product use efficiency, because we can't keep using fertilizers at the high rates we're using them and talk about sustainability, etc. Uh, that train is coming to the end of the track, and we've got to figure out ways to get more out of an acre of soil and do it without creating harm to the environment.
Thank you for sharing that, Darin. In the case of nitrogen, if only 40 to 60% of that nitrogen gets in the plant, what is the fate of that? Well, it's leaching into groundwater, and we're losing much of it to volatilization. And one of the problems with nitrogen is that nitrous oxide has approximately 315 times the greenhouse gas potency of carbon dioxide. So again, there's an efficiency issue, there's an environmental issue, and there's an issue with the plant. Well, Redox has technology that helps with nitrogen metabolism and can reduce leaching and volatilization.
And John, I just want to add one more thing. If up front I were to come walk in the door and tell someone, I'm going to sell you something, but you're only going to get a third of it or 10% of it, that would be a difficult sale. People would reject that up front. And yet in agriculture, we've just come to accept that. Oh, I know I'm only getting that much efficiency. And we've come to accept that as if that's the norm, as if that's okay. And I think where we're coming from at Redox is there are ways that you can take that fertilizer and make it more efficient. There are things you can do to the plant, to the soil, to make that fertilizer more efficient and get more into the plant for better yield and quality. We can no longer accept that, well, it just is what it is. That's not acceptable anymore.
Another key element, very important from the quality as well as yield standpoint, is calcium. And what we're finding is as we increase the potential of crops for yield, we can't leave calcium behind. Calcium is critical to this cell wall organization and structure. So understanding soil dynamics, soil chemistry, as well as having fantastic tools to supplement that, which Redox has, we can profoundly change the potential of that crop. One quick item here is we have new technology that involves highly available calcium and silicon. Silicon is available to the plant in the form of monosilicic acid. And as it's taken up in conjunction, it organizes the calcium in the cell wall. We get a thicker cuticle, multiple benefits. So that's just an example of stepping up that nutritional balance component that we referred to. In addition, it doesn't make sense to apply materials and lose those to undesirable reactions in the soil. So Redox, one of the things that we developed years ago, and there's been additional technology come out over the years, is how to minimize undesirable reactions in the soil as well as the leaf surface. And one of those technologies is unique to Redox, called microencapsulation, where instead of, for example, calcium and silicon reacting with phosphorus or other elements in the soil, we can maintain the viability, make sure that we get those up into the plant in a very, very efficient form. Other technologies that we have are for chelation, complexing, chelation involving divalent cations, complexing monovalent cations and anions, protecting that electrical charge in that plant available form to make sure we could get as efficient uptake in the either from a foliar spray or in the soil as well. Next thing we'd like to talk about is soil health. Now, why soil health? Well, first of all, I mentioned earlier that everyone acknowledges that soil health is actually declining. There are a number of different factors behind that. One is just simple oxidation of organic matter as soils are tilled, but we can't go in the right direction of increasing productivity if we allow the soils to decline. At Redox, we have strong philosophical as well as scientific beliefs as to what can effectively make change with soil health, and they involve soil chemistry, biology, and physiology. So let's just spend just a minute with this. Soil chemistry. If the chemical composition of the soil is wrong, everything you try is going to be futile. In other words, chemistry involves the basic structure of the soil, the flocculation of the soil colloids for air-water relationships. It affects pH. So first things first, the fundamental chemistry must be addressed, and understanding what decisions to make, what inputs, what practices to do is one of the Redox's specialties.
And John, I just like to add to that. If you've ever fermented anything in a fermentation chamber, you know that if you don't balance the chemistry in that fermentation chamber, you do not get the result from that organism that you want. And it's always been perplexing to me how people would look at adding organisms to a soil and not worry about what the chemistry that's in that soil. The first thing you have to do is try to deal with the chemistry in that soil if you're going to add any organism to that soil for that organism to have any.
If you had been able to read Darin's lips, he would have mentioned how if you were in a biological lab, how important chemistry is.
You have to start there, John. I think people get it backwards sometimes, thinking that bugs can fix everything. It's very difficult to put an organism in a harsh environment and have it do the things that it was designed to do. So there's no such thing as a perfect soil, but helping mitigate or reduce extreme soil chemistry issues will only enhance soil biology, and it's where you have to start.
Next key component is biology itself. Now, while the quality and quantity of biology of the soil is often an outcome of soil health, it's also a key factor. And one of the key things in soil biology is the quantity and quality of soluble carbon or food source for the microbial population. And the more weathered, the more cropped the soil has been, the lower the rates of soluble carbon in those soils, and it's often very beneficial to supplement that. The third component, which is very interesting, is the plant physiology component. Plants take photosynthesis, they're byproducts of photosynthesis, carbohydrates, and actually exude those out of the root system. And nature does that because that feeds the microbial activity of the soil, which in turn releases nutrients and provides multiple benefits to the plant. About 90% of all the beneficial microbial activity is within a few centimeters of that root. And so in summary, you've got to have all three. You've got to have a very viable root system. You've got to have adequate carbon, and then you need to have the soil chemistry. The heartwarming, positive part of this is you can make great strides in improving soil health now. It's not a multi-year process. You can actually make huge improvements and see those tangible benefits in the short term as well as the long term.
You know, John, Mother Nature is very forgiving, very forgiving. And I like your point that fixing soil biology or improving soil biology and soil health is something that can start now, and with a few small adjustments, with understanding of soil chemistry, soil biology, and the interaction of the plant and the soil. I love that statement, that it can happen right now, and because the soil is very forgiving. Soil is actually very forgiving, and recognizing that and recognizing the science behind soil health and soil biology will help push that forward.
Well, it's natural for us to turn to root development, and there are many factors which influence root development. We're going to discuss three: phosphorus, calcium, and soluble carbon. Phosphorus is the energy molecule of the plant, basic to root development, high requirements during root development. And one of the challenges with phosphorus is phosphorus in the plant available form of PO4 with a double negative charge is highly attracted with anything with a positive charge. So when Darin referred to efficiency earlier, literally fertilizer that is readily converted to 100% plant available form very quickly can also very quickly tie up in the soil. So if it's not getting to the plant, it's not providing the benefit we're looking for. And the term that we use for this to prevent this is what we call complexing. Redox has some very, very good technology that greatly improves the efficiency of phosphorus uptake and greatly reduces those undesirable reactions. We turn to calcium. Calcium, of course, has several functions agronomically. We reference the soil structure, how important the chemistry is, the soil, and the dynamics of that. We referred to cell wall strength and integrity earlier. One of the things we forget is what happens in the soil is that root tip is applying pressure. It requires ionic plant available calcium. If it does not have adequate calcium, it literally quits growing. So calcium and identifying opportunities for soil availability as well as supplementing calcium is another area of expertise with Redox. Okay. Next, all Redox technologies incorporate, every single one of them incorporates specific types of soluble carbon. We also have key carbon technologies that we utilize to apply to the soil to make up for differences where the soil release of that soluble carbon is not adequate. Next, we'll turn our conversation to abiotic stress defense. Now, abiotic stress, of course, is stress caused by non-living factors. So why is this so important? Well, research has shown that up to 70% of yield losses are driven by abiotic stress factors. In addition, most biotic stress, and when I say biotic stress, now we're referring to insects, pathogens, disease pathogen, nematode. Most of the damage is preceded by abiotic stress factors. So at Redox, we break this down into three key areas: those caused by weather, plant and soil nutrition, and agronomic practices. Now, this graphic here shows us an overview of very common sources of abiotic stress. Okay, and the message we'd like to share in the next couple of minutes is there's a lot of things you can do about this.
I think it's really important to look at this graphic and understand, if you look through each one of those stresses that we list there and think about your plant growing from now in the springtime until harvest in the fall, there's seldom a time when an abiotic stress is not having a negative influence on your plant. Therefore, all of the other things that you get paid for, you desire to do, grow the plant, get quality, get yield, reduce pathogen pressure, is directly influenced by this list of issues. And if we can improve this list of issues, the other things that you want, which is less pathogen pressure, increased quality, increased yield, becomes much more possible. And I think it's really important to understand, seldom is your plant not under some sort of abiotic stress.
Thank you, Darin. Well, this graphic is very important because this is what we would call the primary pathway in a plant, which is a plant's taking sunlight energy, turning it into chemical energy, and that chemical energy in the form of carbohydrates combining with the right type of nitrogen to form amino acids and proteins, which are the building block of life. The key thing when I refer to the yield gap is when we look at opportunities to go to the next level on yield and quality and revenue, we have to look beyond this basic pathway. With that, we introduce what we call the secondary pathway. Well, these secondary pathways exist all the time, but learning how to identify and take advantage of this genetic potential these crops have is one of the key areas of expertise with Redox. Darin, any comments?
Yeah, I think it's really, really important to understand this is an exciting area of ongoing research that has accelerated in the past several years. Something that is where we began is in this secondary metabolic pathway, which is how can I influence the plant to do the things I want it to do? So have you ever thought about what makes an apple red? Well, it's the secondary metabolic pathway that produces these small pigment compounds that make an apple red. Or have you ever thought about what makes a plant a certain shape, or what makes the plant able to deal with drought stress or heat stress? It is this secondary metabolic pathway that allows the plant to deal and create its own little world within the environment that it grows in. Something I try to remind people of all the time is a plant is a sedentary organism. It cannot move. So when it gets too hot for humans, we go sit in the air conditioning or we get out of the heat. The plant has to sit there and take it. So it's developed these pathways to deal with its environment. And this secondary metabolic pathway dealing with abiotic stress is critical in understanding ways to get better yield, better quality, reduce inputs of pesticides, etc., because the plant will do a better job if we accelerate or if we improve this secondary metabolic pathway. The plant will do a better job of growing in its environment.
Thank you, Darin. And I would be very remiss, because we've been talking about yield and quality, if I didn't mention a very important segment of our business, which is the professional turf market. We kind of accidentally fell into that market about 15 years ago, the golf market, and we knew just enough to be dangerous, but we understood nutrition and soil chemistry, and it's been a wonderful market for us. And we're very, very pleased starting this year to have a strategic relationship with Aquatrolls. It's even taking our turf business to a new level.
Yeah, very good relationship.
Yes, and so it's been very positive. We have here on the screen some opportunities to contact Redox the YouTube icon, if you copy that down, you can actually watch this, even the segment where we lost our audio. And I believe we have a few questions. And so I'll let some of our coworkers bring those forward to us.
Yes, so the first question is, the marketplace has become very crowded and will continue to become very crowded. How have you been able to separate yourself from the competition?
Well, that's an excellent question. And 26 years ago, many of the concepts we were talking about were extremely foreign. In fact, flat out rejected. Luminaries at universities, we would discuss plant secondary pathways and they would literally say that doesn't exist. That's not the case anymore. So one of the pros and cons is, yes, there are our segment of the business, this specialty nutrition, specialty agriculture has grown tremendously. I believe the figure is that, wasn't too many years ago, it was a $100 million worldwide business, and now it's approaching $2 billion. So acceptance has been one of the positive side effects. So we love competition. It keeps us sharp. It's great. The marketplace is we think has a very bright future. And quite frankly, we understand from a grower, a consultant standpoint, how to distinguish between various inputs and technologies. And I guess to summarize, at Redox, our philosophy is, let's focus on the symptom. What do you want to change? First of all, we'll provide our feedback. Is it something we can help with? If we can't, we'll try to steer you in the right direction. That philosophy has worked for us.
John, it's the core of who we are. I want to emphasize this: symptom solution. We're not a product-centric company. We are a symptom solution-centric company. And working with growers and consultants in identifying the reason that your crop isn't achieving its goal, whether it's quality, yield, etc., symptom, and then working together to come up with a solution to that, whether it's a product mix, whether it's a specific product or an agronomic practice that needs to be changed. Symptom solution is at the core of who we are. It's how we came to invent the products we have, and it will drive us forward in the future, which is going into agriculture, identifying those areas that are not being addressed in terms of symptoms that are problematic to the plant, and coming up with ways of addressing those symptoms and providing solutions to that.
I agree 100%. And I think one other aspect is we are very, very fortunate as a company to work with some of the best retail companies in the business. So we work with some fantastic people. They in and of themselves help us to set apart our technology just because they're so good. I hope did we answer your question there?
I want to emphasize that also, John. The relationship we have with our distribution partners has allowed us to A, grow, but B, some of the technology we come up with is in discussions with them or in working in the field with them and saying, here's a problem. How do we address that problem? The partnership that we have with our distribution partners is significant and extremely important to us.
Okay, that was not a quick and concise answer. Hopefully we'll do better, but go ahead. What's next?
Can you speak a bit on the entry into the organic markets and why it took so long to get products to market?
Yes. Well, first and foremost, we dotted all the I's and T's. We didn't cut any corners. When we wanted an organic product, we wanted to perform the same as our conventional. That took a lot of time. A lot of our chemistry is difficult, and when you have a more finite group of raw materials, it took time. On top of that, in order to enter into the key markets, it took times to work with the regulators, the certifiers. Having said that, we couldn't be happier with the response from the organic market now that we're there and we have additional ideas for the future. And so it was a long effort, but it's been worth it.
Yeah, our goal was never to just provide an organic offering. It was never just to provide a product that had a stamp of organic. To your point, John, it had to be as efficacious as our conventional materials. And that required an incredible amount of research and time because, as everyone knows, in the organic market, your product offering as far as how you can mix products together and what you can do to formulate gets really small. And how we did that and sometimes the equipment or things that we brought to bear to be able to provide those materials, oftentimes we had to invent the very machinery that it took to make the product. And that's why it took so long, is we were not satisfied with just an organic offering. We wanted to have an organic offering that was as efficacious as any conventional material.
Okay.
What technologies are impossible for others to make? And could you discuss nanotechnology?
Oh, sure. You know, our products include one or more of 11 specific chemistries based on carbon technology. And when I think of that list, there's 4 or 5 that there are probably good offerings in the marketplace that could approximate. The others are either patented or very proprietary. So roughly split down the middle, half would be very, very difficult to duplicate. The other half, you know, there's other good technology as well. Is that a fair statement there?
That's probably a fair statement. Our abiotic stress materials would be very difficult to duplicate. John, we spent a lot of time in specifying and working with those materials. I do want to emphasize something. Everyone is looking for the magic. I want a 5-gallon container that has all of what I need. And at Redox, we've never believed in that. Agronomy is a very complex science, from the type of seed or the genetics of the plant to the type of soil to the environment you're growing it in. All of those things have to be taken into consideration when you look at the success of any product or any program. I think part of what sets us apart and part of what is difficult to replicate for us is ask any one of our sales reps or ask any one of our distribution partners how technologically driven we are in terms of our training and our science. That is part of our success, is not just being, again, a product pushing company, but training in the fundamentals of agronomy, training in soil health, training in soil biology, so that when you go out and look at the system, you understand how to make that system better, not just from a product standpoint, but from a complete approach. That is part of the success of our product offerings, is not just that the products are fantastic, but the science behind them and the way we look at how plants grow and how soils behave is just as important.
Okay.
And could you discuss nanotechnology claims?
Yes. So first of all, let's understand what a nanoparticle is. Understand that a nanoparticle is many, many, many times larger than a plant available form of an ion. So plants take elements up in ionic form, their basic form. Okay. So typically a nanoparticle is a compound, often from a oxide or carbonate standpoint. And there are specific areas of research that are very unique where nanotechnology can be of benefit. But because something claims to be nano, well, all we care about is the plant available form. That's what we care about. So
yeah, nanotechnology is very important when I have an insoluble molecule, John.
yes.
So I can take an insoluble molecule like zinc oxide, crush it down to a nanoparticle size, it can pass through membranes, okay? But to your point, if I have an ionic zinc molecule, that ionic zinc molecule is actually smaller than a nano-sized zinc oxide. So I think people have to really understand, what are you asking for? It's a difficult question to answer, because what are you asking for? Are you talking about nutrient availability? Well, if I have a good fertilizer mix that is ionic, Redox products are ionic, I'm smaller than a nanoparticle. If I have mined material that is insoluble, I want to look at nanotechnology. So I think that's a much more complex question to answer than just one answer. It would be, what are you looking for in terms of the efficacy of that material?
What are the competitive advantages of your product line?
That's an excellent question. I think it goes to less technology and more putting technology into a specific symptom solution. So taking budget dollar and making sure that a particular solution is actually going to create a return on investment. As we look at our fantastic distributors and what they do, that's what they do on a day-to-day basis. And when they're using Redox technology, it's an effort to make money for their customers. So we want to make sure that we're taking that budget dollar and putting it into the best ROI possible.
Okay. Why does your technology differ from that of other manufacturers?
Well, we'd have to dissect that one by one. Okay. And I mentioned that, you know, some of our technology is patented while others is proprietary. And we just, when it's proprietary, we keep it to ourselves, and very limited people that have access to that technology. It kind of goes back to a question we answered earlier. About half of the key chemistries are quite unique, very difficult to duplicate. Others, you know, I'd say, you know, there are other technologies that have at least a parallel or similarity. So I hope that's a good answer to that.
If I'm a new customer, why should I use your products?
Well, we don't know until we.
Because you like us.
Honestly, if I think if there's a motivation to change, if there's a strong motivation to change, that's the first step. If a grower is entirely content, happy with what they're doing, they're satisfied with their returns, perhaps we don't have anything to talk about. But if there's a change motivation, that's the beginning. And quite frankly, I think that's been one of our hallmarks right from the beginning. Is we are certainly willing to say, you know, that's not something we can help you with, or yeah, I think we have a high probability of helping, and provide feedback.
I would say, John, if you go to our 4 solutions that we went through, okay, if you look at those 4 solutions, if any one of those solutions you consider that to be a limiting area for you to achieve your yield, quality, return on investment, then we will be able to help you. We've built a company on those 4 solutions and helping people overcome issues within those 4 solutions. To your point, if not, if you're satisfied in those 4 solutions that you're doing everything you can and meeting your goals, don't change. Why would you change? Why would you change? That's been something that we've advocated from the beginning, is if you're happy, if you're getting the return on investment you want, why change? But if you're not, and you feel that there's an arena within those 4 solutions that you're not addressing, we definitely can make a difference.
Okay, sorry, one last question. Are Redox products considered biostimulants? If so, which ones?
No, that's a very good question. The biostimulant industry itself has admitted that they don't have a good definition of biostimulants. Okay, so it depends who you're talking to. We have preferred referring to our technology as bio-nutrient technology. Some might consider our technology to be biostimulant. That's not a term that we use day in and day out.
We firmly believe in plant nutrition. Okay, so we want to constantly be adding those mineral elements that cause a plant to grow. But what we do to those mineral ions, how we mix them and blend them and look at them, hence the term bionutrient. Biostimulant is a term that's, I think, almost oftentimes abused. And we want to stay true to our core nature, which is the use of mineral elements to grow plant yield and quality, deal with abiotic stress. That's how a plant grows. That's how a plant grows.
I think that's all the questions.
Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, okay, thank you.